What is up, Cardinals fans? Welcome back to TCR Live. I am joined once again by my good friend Kyler Burd. Kyler, how the heck are you, sir?
I'm doing really good, Joseph. I always look forward to Thursday nights now, since we're starting to make this sort of a regular thing. So I'm glad to be here. I know we got a lot to talk about.
Well, I'm glad your response is I look forward to that and not like Thursday night again, right? So I'm glad you're able to join me. It's always fun for me, and we got some folks joining us. We got Kathy Lummer. Thank you for being here. Can't wait. Well, we're here. We've started. We've got Lennon Wolf, the man, the legend, Classy Nasty with some side eye, and finally, where are you? That they were waiting. We were talking a little bit behind. Pedro Orta, my buddy from a long time ago, used to play video games with this dude. Thanks for dropping in, dude. Yeah, we were chatting behind or in the studio, so to speak, about my next video that I'm working on. Kyler got a little bit of a sneak peek.
Yeah.
It's gonna be about the Kyler Murray contract, so watch for that. I might get it out tonight. If not, it'll be tomorrow, but working on that. So appreciate y'all being here. And so we're gonna talk about the Arizona Cardinals. What we're planning to talk about today is the extensions of Steve Keim and Kliff Kingsbury, and what was the rationale behind that? How do you feel about that? And obviously, we'll get into your comments and questions in the chat, and we'll probably talk a little bit about what does that mean for Kyler, right? So, David Pan here. It seems like the Cards organization still has confidence in Kliff. Right, and Wolf Lang is saying 41 million, not 45. Okay, I'm guessing that's what you think for Kyler. Okay, so Kyler, I'm gonna let you get us started. So I think it caught a lot of people by surprise, the extensions, to Keim and Kliff, and I would say more so the Kliff one, because I think Keim's on the last year of his deal, but Kliff had yet another year on his deal, if I'm not mistaken. So they didn't necessarily have to extend them both right now, but they did, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think is the rationale behind doing the extensions when they did them?
I've had a little bit more time to think about it, because my initial reaction was it being a response to Kyler Murray and his agent claiming that there's a lack of organizational stability and things along those lines. So solidifying the coach and the GM that drafted and have coached Kyler Murray in the NFL is a signal to him that the organization's stable. But obviously these deals take a long time to go into effect. So the working behind of these deals was probably far before Eric Burkhart and Kyler Murray's little letter that they released earlier in the week. But I still think it might have something to do with that. Kliff was more surprising, I agree, because general consensus would have thought going into 2022 that Kliff's going to be on the hot seat because of the second half collapses and because of the really, really bad wild card performance. You would think that coach might be on the hot seat, but I guess Michael Bidwell sees something a little bit different. And Steve Keim, I do think he was on the last year of his contract. So if an extension was going to happen, it was going to happen now. But the main surprise was not necessarily that Steve Keim was extended, but it was the length of both extensions. They're very, very long contracts. I guess that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be here for that long, but that is still guaranteed money until 2027 for both of them. So at this point, Michael Bidwell's like thrown the life rafts away, and he's 100% into the combination of Steve Keim, Kliff Kingsbury, and to me that also means that Kyler Murray is not far behind.
Yeah, I generally agree with everything you've said. I'll kind of dive into a little bit more because you said you referenced the letter from Kyler and Kliff's agent, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I initially it would be maybe the thought, well, was that just something to do with the pressure of that? Well, not necessarily, but I do think that had something to do with it, and I think there's something to be said for when the whole idea of a lame duck coach or lame duck general manager. And I think the timing, and not just this year, but the fact that that it was this week is not a coincidence, because free agency is getting ready to start, and you have to attract free agents. And if free agents, especially top free agents, look at this and think, is this regime about to kind of be turned over?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
It might make it more difficult to attract top free agents. So I think I think Michael Bidwell he was disappointed, upset about how the way things ended. That was clear. But I think he took some time, and I'll say I respect Michael Bidwell. I know some people are critical. I actually think he does a really good job in terms of the way he handles things. Yeah. I think he took some time, thought about it, cooler heads prevailed, and he looked at it and said, free agency's around the corner. We need to build this thing, and there needs to be a vote of confidence if we want to attract top free agents. Yeah. That stability. So I think they extended them. He extended them saying, we're going all in on this group, and we're going to go all in on building this team. They've made improvements over the year. We didn't like the way it ends. We got to fix that. But I think it had to do with that. Now, the whole thing with the letter from the agent, I think that I do think it had something to do with it in this. That letter was sort of an indicator, or gave the sign that not everything was right. Okay. Something was wrong. And I think Michael Bidwell looked at that and said, all right, I have to do some damage control. I have to change the narrative, or make it clear. People think that I'm ready to trade Kyler, that Kliff is, on the hot seat. Keim's a year away from getting fired. And again, I'm going to give Michael Bidwell credit. Instead of coming out with statements to try to fix that, he knew that these extensions would fix that in a very decisive way, right? The whole thing, actions or money speak louder than words. So I think, that, what he did was, in my opinion, a smart way to shut down like the questions of dysfunction. And I think a Kyler extension is just around the corner. Yes. Maybe not just around the corner, but it's coming, I think, in the next year. And, Wolf saying, yeah, he was a federal prosecutor. And so like before he came back to run the team. So, and, if you don't get to be a federal prosecutor without being very savvy and understanding people, right? Good damage control. Hey, what's up, Protect? Appreciate you being here. Ellen, let me say hi to some of the folks that are in here. Apologize for not doing that earlier. I got into my monologue. Jason Crow, Kyler, to me, he needs to prove himself leadership wise. Well, you can say maybe, but I think you still have to sign him. And the video I'm going to do is going to talk about that a little bit. But Silver Wolf's here. AZ is here. Thanks for being here. We have Kyler Burd to save us if Kyler Murray leaves. Awesome. We got Grandizer. Appreciate you. What's up, Grandizer? Thank you for being here. Everyone, yes, please hit the like button. Thank you. Grandizer's a good dude. And if I missed anyone, I apologize. So, you talked about the length of the extensions. And that did strike me at first. That's a long extension, especially for, and you could argue that he doubled down on being decisive in trying to completely squash the rumors of discord. But I think there's more to it than just that, because if you look at that, I think what he's doing is he is tying all three of them together. I think the Kyler Murray contract is going to end then too. I think that would make it a 5-year extension, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that shows us a sign of what we can expect for the Kyler Murray contract. And I think he's lining up all three of those so that we get a nice 5-6 year run for them to get it figured out. And if if they, and then if they don't work, it's a clean slate for all of them at the same time, right? There's no overlapping, overhanging contracts. So I think that's why the timing was, is that he's planning to just tie all their fates together and move forward.
I think you're right. I think 2019 was Michael Bidwell starting to really assert himself as the new owner of the team by doing something by that time pretty crazy, taking a quarterback again in the next year and getting rid of your top 10 quarterback. So he took such a risk from the reputation standpoint of him as the owner amongst other owners, and then of the franchise. So doubling down, he's tripling down at this point. If he's actually prepared to tie the three of these guys together for that long, then you also have to think, if things go horribly wrong, what is it going to take for him to reverse himself from the triple down? Like, how horrible of a performance would Keim and Kliff have to break up this little tripartite agreement that we have between Keim, Kliff, and Kyler? Because I agree that they are here together, and if one of those pieces gets broken off, the whole thing gets broken off. I can't see Kliff coaching this team without Kyler. I really can't see Kyler playing on this team without Kliff, and Keim is sort of the glue of the whole thing. But like ProTech pointed out, Michael Bidwell did some wonderful damage control. Because I liked what you said about free agents. The letter that Kyler Murray and Burkhardt put out, I know that had to have just mortified Michael Bidwell because of the free agent market. Every player in the NFL who is a free agent right now read, or at least got the gist of that letter, because it was very long. Most people did not read it, I'm sure. But they know what was in it, and they know that there's that little bit of discontent. And sometimes that's enough to put off a player from going to a place, especially if they have all the options in the world of where they want to go. So getting everything solid and showing the entire NFL world, that those really early offseason rumors about the ownership not paying the playoff bonuses to the coaches because Michael Bidwell was so pissed off at everyone, which I highly doubt there was any veracity to that at all. An organization just isn't going to do that. But the Cardinals have gotten bad press in the last couple months. It has not been pretty for his organization, and he's going to have to triple down to quell everything and make things calm. And that means who knows how many more years of chances for Keim to get it right.
Yeah. And I know I sound like a Michael Bidwell fanboy, but I paid attention to how he responds and deals with things. And I have not seen many missteps from Michael Bidwell.
I think he's a very good owner.
Yeah. And even the most minor missteps, what you might say, I think he's instead of making them worse, he's always kind of corrected it. And I think he does a good job. So I agree with you. There's one minor thing I think I don't completely agree with that you said, and I'll just point this out. You talked about and in general, I agree that all three of them are tied together. The one little caveat I would add is I can see a world where Kyler Murray continues to be the quarterback, but the other two are gone. If he shows himself to be as good as we think he is, I could see a world where 3, 4, or even 5 years down the road, the other two are gone, but he isn't here. That's the only, maybe that I'm splitting hairs.
I agree. I think the most plausible of all the scenarios would Kliff and Kyler remaining and Keim leaving. Because, you do only get so many years as a GM without at least winning some playoff games. And I know Keim has gotten a couple during his tenure as the GM, but he's been holding on and milking those wins for quite a while. I don't know too many GMs in the league who have gotten as many roster chances as him. So I could very well see a world in which Kyler, if he gets the deal that he wants, remains the quarterback regardless of who the GM and the coach are. Yeah, that makes sense.
And Robert's point here, and Robert, hey, thanks for being here. I think speaks to one of the, we need to get younger talent on the team, and that has a lot to do with what Keim's biggest weakness has been is the draft, right? And Jason's building on this. Keim needs to draft players in the first time they're actually going to play. I would say though, and not work on projects. I will say this. I'm going to pin that a little more on the coaching than on Keim as far as them not playing them. Keim's had some mistakes and a lot of misses in draft. Every GM has some, but he's had an inordinate number of them. But them not playing, I'm going to put that in the coaching staff. But sorry, just had a little internet hiccup. But anyway, but he needs to do better drafting. And that's part of the reason we don't have the young talent. So yeah. And so I want to get into talking about, how you feel about the extension. We talked about the rationale. Do you support it? And as kind of a segue to that, I did a poll on my community tab, and some of you in the chat may have participated. So thank you for doing that to kind of, get a sense of the feeling of at least the people in this channel's community, how they feel about the extensions. And, you see here about 7% of people were all for it, then 26% were like, I get it. You need stability to move forward. The largest, the mode was, with 36% was I'm not totally against it, but it does seem a little premature. Then we had 22% of people responding with I don't like it. They haven't done enough to warrant it yet. And then 9% I hate it. They should be fired, not extended. So, two questions for you, Kyler. What do you think? Does this kind of poll surprise you in terms of how the fan base has responded? And then if you were taking this poll, which one of these would you have selected?
Yeah. So I was actually surprised at the response. I was pretty surprised. I think this kind of goes toward a point that the most negative people just generally tend to be the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
I very much expected the last option to be a little bit more popular than 9%. So the fact that between the top 3 options, I love it, I get it, I'm not totally against it. That's over half of the responses, well over half. I think that's actually very reasonable. I'm glad to see that the fan base isn't 100% reacting on emotion to the bad loss. And I mean, people have hated Keim for years. It's nothing new at all. And Kliff is kind of polarizing as well. But if I was taking it, I would be the third option or between the third and second option, because I do get it. I 100% understand the rationale behind it. And from a realpolitik type of viewpoint, yeah, it is a good ownership move for sure. Now, do Keim and Kliff deserve it? I have some issues with that, mostly because of the length of the extension. And if your point is correct that the length of those extensions have something to do with the length of contract that Kyler's going to need, then once again, I go up to that second option because I get the rationale. But from just performance, have Kliff and Keim deserved it? No. Keim, you cannot be a GM in the NFL and only be good at trading. You cannot be a GM in the NFL and be good at trades and an occasional big name free agent. You have to be able to draft. And a lot of the problems that keep cropping up and which go ahead and impact coaching because the coach can only use the players that he has on his roster. There's not a ton of young talent, and the roster depth has shown to be pretty bad throughout the course of a season. So Keim particularly, he does not deserve the extension. I get why he's part of this package deal. And Kliff, I'm not ready to fire Kliff yet because it has only been 3 years. He's had an improved record every single year. I can kind of see that a little bit more objectively now with some distance from the season. So, is it premature to give him that long of an extension? Yes. But if it's going to be a package deal with the three of them, I want to see Kyler remain the quarterback in Arizona. So I get it. You need stability to move forward.
Yeah, I think I'm very much where you're at. You know, when I first put this poll up and I was first thinking about it, I think my initial response was I'm not totally against it, but it does seem a little premature. And the more I think about it, especially in light of the free agency, and the concerns about having a lame duck regime, right,
Mhm.
and needing to show that stability, I shift to I get it. But I think you make a point that isn't really available or captured in the options I presented. Is okay. Well, I get it. Maybe the extension is still too long, and obviously there's the whole Kyler contract. But they could have extended them for a couple years. Their contracts don't have to line up with Kyler Murray's.
Yeah.
So but I get it. And yeah, so I have a similar, kind of reaction to you. And, there's, and I'm just throwing up chat comments from folks here. Thanks for everyone for being here. And there's a couple questions that we'll get to here. But like, you and I were talking a little bit about this before about Kyler's having to do with topic of Kyler's contract before we went live. But, you asked the question, well, do they deserve it? And I think sometimes fans don't always get that just because someone doesn't deserve a contract doesn't mean that contract is a mistake, if that makes sense. Because like you have to take this pragmatic approach of looking at what works and what is functional. And the idea that Kliff and Keim don't deserve this extension, if you believe that, and the idea that they needed to make the extension because of the lame duck dynamic we were talking about, those aren't mutually exclusive ideas. It can be the right decision for Bidwell to extend them because he wants to not have that whole kind of that he doesn't want it to be a problem for free agency. And it can also be true that they haven't really deserved it, but it was the pragmatic move anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Similarly, you can think it's not that Kyler hasn't earned an extension as big as he's going to get, yet at the same time, in the realities of the quarterback market, the right move is to sign Kyler to an extension, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, that's and that's a nuanced point, but you have to understand that sometimes pragmatism and fair and right don't always align. Right?
Yes, especially in business. And the NFL at the end of the day is a business. It makes a ridiculous amount of money for a lot of people. So
yeah, and I'm sorry, and he's saying, yeah, just because I guess it doesn't mean, no, they can get fired. It just, what it means is Michael Bidwell, if he fires him, he and the organization are taking a big hit. There's not a salary cap implication, so it's out of his pocketbooks. And listen, again, I know it sounds like I'm just like totally, really, really sucking up to Michael Bidwell, but I give him a hell of a lot of credit that he is, he's doing this. And what that means is if it doesn't work and he made a mistake and he has to fire them, it's coming out of his pocket. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. He's being incredibly risky in this with his own money in a sense. He owns the team, so it's his money in a way. It's not salary cap. It's none of that. This is a personal hit on Michael Bidwell if it doesn't pan out. So I do respect the guts to make a move like that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll tell you, I had a question earlier and although it's not the topic and it's kind of was a little bit what we talked about last week, I want to throw this out there and we'll just talk about this for a minute, and I don't want to, I think this isn't going to be the whole stream because we're going to have other streams probably about free agency coming up. But real quick, and I know we actually last week we talked about some, but like if you had to pick like 2 or 3 names, who would you like the Cardinals to target in free agency? Who's kind of at the top of your list? I know that's putting you on the spot.
Yeah. One that I keep coming back to, I really like Austin Corbett, the guard from the Rams. I think he would be a great addition to the interior of the offensive line. I didn't talk about him last time because we were trying to stick to budget free agents, and he's going to be a little bit more expensive. The PFF projection on him, he's 26 years old, and the contract projection would be 4 years at 9.25 a year average. So not a cheap guard, but from what I saw of the Rams this year, he's very good. He's very young. I think he would be a great addition, and he's not like a wild overspend, I don't think, in any way. He's worth that money to me. And then another, of course, just sort of a dream for a lot of Cardinals fans. I would love to see J.C. Jackson be a Cardinal, but he is going to be remarkably expensive. The PFF projection on him was 4 years at an $18 million average. I would love to have him on the team. You made a lot of good points in the last video, which if you guys didn't watch it, it's up on Joseph's channel. So go watch it on the budget free agents. Your points about you don't necessarily need to build the secondary through one huge name player. I get that, but would I be mad if the Cardinals signed J.C. Jackson? Absolutely not. Is it going to take a lot of money? Sure. And I want to hear your thoughts on wide receiver, because it's going to be a little controversial as far as what we do with Christian Kirk, keeping him around. I think general consensus is AJ Green's not going to be a Cardinal next year, but that means the Cardinals might be looking for wide receiver options out there. Michael Gallup will be expensive, but he is out there on the market. About 4 years, $13.75 million a year. Do you think that they need to go after like a recognizable wide receiver name?
That's a really good question. And, a lot of that, I mean, what they do with Ertz and Kirk determines everything, because if they bring those two back, they can't afford to spend that kind of money on a Z receiver. So, if they do bring back Kirk and Ertz, then I say draft a receiver, a tall, big receiver, someone like Pierce out of Cincinnati, maybe on day 2, or go with someone like who I talked about, Auden Tate, a budget kind of guy, and platoon the rookie and him and Wesley. If they let those two walk, if they let Kirk walk and they let Ertz walk, then I think they should spend something on that outside receiver. I don't know that Gallup is the guy for me. Maybe he could be. He's a good receiver. I still like the bigger options like DJ Chark or Mike Williams or someone like that instead. But so if they don't spend on Kirk, then I think they should spend on that outside receiver. So,
one quick note that I saw on Twitter today, some page, I think might have been Raising Zona's Twitter, had asked the question on Christian Kirk, would you guys like him to stay or leave? And Max Williams actually replied to that. And
I saw that.
Said they wanted him to stay. And I think Christian Kirk replied to that as well. So who knows what's going to happen.
Speaking of receivers, now I didn't get to watch. I saw he ran a good 40. Christian Watson, he was like a day 2 or 3 receiver pick. So I wonder if he's going to move up. So yeah. So and I'll just throw one name out there. A guy that I hope they sign. I mean, this is not a new name. This is a name that I kind of talked about before, but the guy I want, this is my favorite. And it's not even the biggest name on my list, but Ted Karras, the guard center. I just love how he solves 2 problems with, starting guard, backup center. done, right? I think you should get one other guard in addition to him, whether that be you are restructuring Pugh or signing a replacement for Pugh. But so I want to get back to though, and I did want to ask that question, but get that question up there because it was asked. But I want to get to another thing. The statement. Now we don't have to read through it.
Oh man.
And I know we're a little bit late on this. I mean, this has been talked about for a while, but I haven't had a stream where I've talked about this. What is your take on the statement?
I'm really torn on the whole situation because I definitely am not a Kyler hater. I'm very much in his camp. I think he has all the potential in the world to be a great franchise quarterback, and I'm going to stick with that because I really do believe in his talent. I did not like this letter very much, especially from the perspective of a fan. It makes you at least wonder a little bit about the rumors out there about character and things like that. I just wasn't a fan of it. I didn't think it was the right way to go about it. But I also am trying to realize that this is just sort of the business of the NFL these days, like a contract negotiation tactic that not just him, but plenty of other players have used is scrubbing your social media, doing the whole thing. So he's just following the lead of players before him and how they've handled their contract negotiations. Am I a fan of it from a personal standpoint? No. But I also understand that, he's playing the game as a job and everyone wants to get paid to do their job. And I'm trying to understand it from that angle. And one thing that is a thing with me, and I think with a lot of Cardinals fans, is just having had Larry Fitzgerald be the face of your franchise for so long, have pretty much no problems, character problems, personnel problems, player-to-player problems with him for so long that we're not entirely used to like a star player going through these sort of negotiations and using these sort of tactics to get what they want. It's just not the type of human being that Larry is. So I'm trying to bring myself back into the real world of the NFL where this stuff happens all the time. And we can't just rely on the goodness and the good graces of Larry Fitzgerald.
We've been spoiled by Fitz. I mean,
oh yeah, so spoiled.
Yeah.
No problems with him for 17 years and incredible play for 17 years. We are a very spoiled franchise in that regard because we never had a problem with him. He never brought attention onto himself the same way a kind of caricature of a letter does to Kyler.
Yeah. Now let me kind of give maybe what I hope is a little perspective on this. Like, let me first say, to me, this was all the agent. I think when it comes to stuff like this, the agent is speaking on behalf of. Now, listen, the client has to give an okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so like, so Kyler has some, responsibility in that he gave the stamp of approval. And our buddy Aaron Van Buren, hey Aaron, AARR on. Sorry, I know he's tired of that joke. But thanks for popping in. But this is like it was sent out by the agent, and I think this was all. I mean, okay. The content of the letter, in terms, I know some people said, "Oh, if this is how he thinks, that's messed up." I'll tell you, this letter, in my opinion, does articulate what most players and agents think when they're in contract negotiations. Nothing about the content actually, to me, was that problematic. I know some people might disagree, but like this is the kind of stuff, if you're an agent, you say in negotiations with an organization, and this is what players think. All right, we've sent you, a contract. We've put The ball's in your court. Show us that you mean it. And, it's just this language doesn't get public, right? This is what most players and agents think in these processes. And I have to imagine that most people who actually, work in the NFL and they read this like, well, okay, yeah, this is what goes on behind the scenes. But the problem is you don't make this public, right? And to me, that was the part that's weird. And let's see. I didn't hear what Jay Feely said about, so that'd be interesting to see. Jay Feely has strong opinions. But like, what was weird is this is a breach of protocol, right? You don't usually the way this plays out is that the agent and the player will drop subtle hints in the things they say that convey this message, but they do it more carefully and tactfully in little bits here and there, in little sound bites and interviews. They get the message in this letter. The agent's job is to get this very message out there tactfully and carefully. So when I look at it, I actually think of it as like this agent, instead of doing the dance and the very masterful job of getting this message out there, he's like, I'm just going to put out a letter. Like it was sloppy. It was a sloppy delivery of a message that you're paid to deliver carefully and in a PR sort of way, right? And I think the agent was trying to think outside the box, got too cute, and did something that looked bad.
It comes across as aggressive, and it comes across as heavy-handed. People might be a little bit more used to those drawn-out contract negotiations with, at the end of an interview, they sort of drop something about, wanting to get paid, things like that. Mm-hmm. This was rather aggressive in many ways. I haven't seen too many of these types of letters come out. And in reference to what someone said, Elliot Stevens, about Jay Feely's tweet, this is what he said.
Okay.
Everything Kyler Murray and his team have done this offseason have worked against their desire for a new contract. How about put your head down and work, be humble about your deficiencies, and take steps to become a better quarterback? That shows leadership and a real desire to win a championship.
I mean, the way this is supposed to work is the player is supposed to put his head down and say, when he's asked questions, that my agent's going to take care of that. I'm going to do my job and it'll take care of itself. And then the agent is supposed to deliver this message in a more subtle way. Right.
Yes.
So, yeah. And so I generally agree that I think Mr. Mono's saying here, there's a point where the 24-year-old and I do think you need to give, Kyler a little bit of a break here, because he's 24 years old. He's new to this. Yeah. I mean, he's got to, his agent's telling him, I want to do this. And I mean, Kyler, there's some nuance here. I mean, Kyler, it's tough. Do you expect a 24-year-old to get that? Maybe he should have known, maybe he shouldn't. But the agent's job is to lead him correctly in these waters, and he didn't.
Yeah,
right?
No, he led him astray a little bit on this one, because it makes Kyler come across as self-centered and far more concerned about himself and his contract and the success of his team.
Yeah, and then Aaron's talking about this agent, something he had done that costs. Okay, and I wasn't familiar with that story, but I'll trust you there. Yeah, okay. So let me real quick say hey to some other folks that have jumped in here. Kirk's Legacy, thanks for being here. Yes, we have Kliff long term now. Like it or live it, we do. We have no money now. Here's the thing, though. Right now we don't, but there's a lot of room that they can make. There's some contracts there's some players they can cut, and there's some players they can restructure. And there's even some players that I know people don't want to hear this, but DJ Humphries, I think what they're going to do is they're actually going to extend him in a way that because he's got a huge cap hit. But there's ways you can extend him that could probably save the Cardinals $10 million in cap space or so this year, and it pushes out later. But anyway, I think Justin Pugh is going to be either cut or restructured. So yeah, then let me real quick say, hey, Xbox Fanatics, thanks for being here. Let's go K1. What do you think he should be paid? It's interesting you should ask that. I'm actually not going to answer that question right now because I am currently working on a video that will answer that question. I shared some of that with Kyler behind the scenes. This afternoon before we went live, I was working on recording some of it. When we're done, I'm going to work on it again. So watch for a video from me either tonight or tomorrow, I would guess, depending on how long it takes me to get it recorded, that will answer that question with data to back it up.
It's going to be good.
I think so too, the letter makes him sound like all the wins are listen, again, I blame that on the agent. I think the agent wrote it, and but yeah, I mean, listen, it was a bad sloppy letter. I think that's my take. Yeah. It was a bad move, but I don't think anything in there is stuff that isn't said every year behind the door, behind closed doors and negotiations. I think that's the kind of stuff that always is said behind closed doors. The problem is they aired it and it looked bad, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So, we kind of went through the main things we want to talk about. So we want to kind of do a little bit of Q&A. We've got a little bit of time left to try to wrap us up here within an hour or less. So maybe, is there anything that you all want to talk about? And, TCR is goated, like goatee. Let's see. Let me get a couple of the comments in here. We can, there was word that Andy Isabella was given permission to seek a trade. So we might get a bag of chips for him. No, I know that's mean. What do you think his trade value is?
At this point, having been used so little, it's continually gone down. It's hard. Maybe I think we'd be fairly lucky to get a fifth rounder.
I think you're right. Aaron's saying what a bust, and his career has been a bust. I still think in the right situation, he could be a decent NFL receiver. I think he needs a fresh start, right? So, I think it's a tough situation, but I think a day 3 pick is probably what you're looking at.
Yeah.
I want to real quick acknowledge and say thank you to Rafael Castillo. Thank you for the super chat. Hey, TCR, you and Mike and Kyler and Mystic, and I'm sure others keep our offseason very interesting and engaging. Thanks so much for these live streams. You guys will always have my support. Go Cards. Thank you, Rafael. That means a lot. I really appreciate everyone in here. Obviously, the super chat, I appreciate that to help support, what I'm doing with the channel and trying to grow it. But I also appreciate the really thoughtful words. For me, I assure you, whatever positive you get out of this, I get it double. Kyler and I are both Cardinals fans who don't have the benefit of living in Arizona because of our lives and careers. And I'll tell you, and I imagine Kyler would say, I speak for him on this too, that the opportunity to hang out with you guys here really fills this great void for us as fans who aren't surrounded by Cardinals fans.
Definitely. Yes.
So, please know, thank you so much. And please know that you guys, and Aaron, same thing goes for Aaron. He doesn't live in Arizona. So please know that, it means a lot to hear that what we're doing is meaningful for you, and know that you guys being part of this community is also meaningful for us. So thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you for the kind words. And also it's a law in 37 states that when there's a super chat, I have to do the super chat video. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that. So Andy should seek a trade. He's just taking a roster spot. Well, I think he's going to. Even giving from Andy's perspective, he doesn't want to sit on the bench. Yeah, he wants a chance to prove himself, right? So, and I hope he gets that chance. I think in the right situation, I'm not saying he's going to be a star, but I think in the right situation, he could be a solid, number 3 receiver on a team somewhere if he gets a chance to play. So we'll see. But Xbox, thank you for the TCR. Awesome. Thank you for the kind words. Appreciate that. Yes. And then join the Discord. Yes. I forgot to mention that there's a link below. If you aren't, I think most of the folks in here are part of the Discord, but if you aren't, jump in there. Throughout the week, we have great conversations. We have chats. We chat about all kinds of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff we talk about in here is talked about throughout the week. So if you want to get your Cardinals fix, jump in there. There's a good group in there. Every day there's conversation. So get the links below. And while I'm doing some housekeeping, one last thing, I want to thank the channel members. A few of them are in here now, including Mark Jackson. And I think there might be a few. Lennon was here earlier. So these are folks who, support the channel on a monthly basis. So thank you as well. I want to give a shout out each time. Oh, well. And while we're at shout outs, thank you again, Raphael. Oh, believe me, I live in Los Angeles, so you can imagine me during parade this year, how it feels to be that's rough, man. LA. And because you got to deal with the Rams fans, and I don't know if you're a Suns fan and a D-backs fan, then you got to deal with the Dodgers and Lakers. I don't know, maybe you're fans of those teams, but well, then we can commiserate on that. So thank you again. I appreciate that. All right. So yeah, I think, I hope Andy Isabella gets a shot somewhere else. That's tough. Let's see, just looking at chat, Kyler's saying, oh, here we go. Mark Jackson was something. Oh, it's come out. I was right about something happening in the locker room. Looks like Kyler was the problem. Too many vets on the team. Baby does. Oh, ouch. Okay. I don't know that I agree with that. But hey, I like you and appreciate your respect. And then, all right. So other thoughts and any comments that stick out to you or anything else you want to kind of jump onto there, Kyler?
Let's see. I did see something. I did. Yeah, there's a good one.
Simmons is an interesting one. What do you think about Simmons? Because, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Simmons?
I've been on the fire Billy Davis train for a long time. We just have a long history of screwing up linebackers with Hassan Reddick down through Isaiah Simmons and now Zaven Collins. And not necessarily that we're screwing them up, but that we're using them incorrectly or that we don't use them at all. And I think a lot of that's Billy Davis, and he needs to go. Some of that's Vance Joseph making decisions on usage and things like that. Because I think Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins both have all the potential to be great players, especially Isaiah Simmons. He is athletically freaky. He can be a fantastic player, and I think we saw some of those moments from him this year. But the fact that we drafted another linebacker in the first round and didn't see enough of him during the season to even have the hope of his high potential, there's a lot of coaching issues in that specific area of the ball that need to be worked out. But I like Simmons a lot. I'm a huge Isaiah Simmons fan because I think he has a lot of potential and he can impact the game in so many different ways just because of how athletic he is. I think it's ridiculous that he was ever not playing this season, particularly in his second season.
Yeah, I think the talent is really, really, really impressive with him. I do think there's a question about what position he plays. And unfortunately, when you have those hybrid guys, that's, one of the things, and I forget, it was a podcast I was listening, they talked about when you have a hybrid player like this, they have to have a home, position that's their kind of foundation, and then maybe you expand them out. And, there aren't a lot of guys that are true hybrids like him that have been truly stars. That it's worked out. And, and that's a little bit tricky. Should he be playing safety or should he be playing linebacker? And that's a tough one. I mean, obviously I love our safety, so he's not going to start over them.
Yeah.
it's tough. Are they misusing him? But all the inside linebackers have struggled. And part of that is, we've talked about a lot. Is it Bill Davis? Is it the defensive interior lineman not, giving them, kind of what they need in terms of taking up blocks? So he needs to be out there. He did struggle at points. It's tough. So yeah, my hope is that they're going to address the interior defensive line, and that's going to fix a lot of this. We'll see, right?
Yeah.
Any word on whether Kliff will have an OC?
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I haven't either. I mean, I have to imagine. I mean, they're going to change some things. I don't know what it is because, obviously they had some conversations about the way the season ended. They didn't like it. Michael Bidwell wasn't okay with it. And I have to imagine that meeting involved, all right, what are we changing? I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. And I don't know what the timing would be on that. So that's a good question. Let's see. If we go wide receiver in the first, will Kyler have more pressure on him this year? Will be more of his fault if it goes badly in 2022? What do you think about that?
I do think there's going to be more pressure on him if they do go, hopefully a big name offensive playmaker, and you add that to a healthy DeAndre Hopkins and you bring back Zach Ertz and James Conner, then since the offense runs through Kyler Murray, there's going to be quite a bit of pressure on him. You can't make an excuse that he's playing with Christian Kirk, who's a little hit or miss, and AJ Green, who's at the tail end of a good career. You have a lot less of those excuses if you go and pick a pretty high pick for an offensive player. So, yeah, he would be under more pressure, particularly if it was someone that he particularly wanted. I know he's pointed out players to Keim in the past that he likes. Rondale Moore was even partially Kyler's pick, or at least mentioned his name to Keim about a guy that he would like. So if they do go out in the first and break from the defensive players that we've had the past few years and get this big guy from a big school, probably some SEC wide receiver, then there will be a little bit more pressure on him to perform, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to put more pressure on him. That's a tough one. I mean, I imagine he's going to have a contract extension before he's playing. Well, maybe he won't, but if he does, I think that helps take off some of the pressure either way. I don't know. I mean, and even if they draft a receiver in the first round, that receiver, receivers lately have played well in their first year.
Yeah.
But if the receiver, but sometimes they do need a little bit of time. So I don't know that I'd say it gives them more pressure this year. They might look at, I don't know. We'll see. Another question that I saw that I thought was interesting is who would you trade for to fit? So, and let me maybe just reword this or reframe this question just a little bit. Is there a player you would trade for to try to fix a position, or what's your thought on trading?
I think trading can fix a position if you have adequate depth behind it, where you're just having a massive upgrade to a position rather than trying to fix a position from scratch. And wide receiver might be one of those types of positions because there are good wide receivers on the roster. I don't think it's the worst position group by far. But I don't know, because an impact interior defensive lineman, I think, could change the entire defense. Because if you start changing the D line and works its way back to the linebacker group and then the secondary, that could fix a position. But I'm not sure that there is one player that I can think of that's just an automatic fix.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I would say it's like when you're trading, you're giving up assets, and it's usually you're talking about a draft pick. And and I'm not that I'm against giving up draft picks if it's the right player, but you have to think about, what needs can you address with that pick, right? So like for me in a trade, it needs to be a player And also you have to contrast it against who can you get in free agency without having to give up an asset. You just pay them, right? Versus who can you get in the draft. So for me, a trade has to be a player that is really good and it's a really good value, and you can't get someone comparable in the draft or in free, like the DeAndre Hopkins trade, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're doing that 6 times a week, twice, or 7 times a week, twice on Sunday, right? That's just like, right.
There's no situation in which you would not take DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson in a second rounder. There just does not exist a reality in which you wouldn't do that trade.
Right. And I don't mind, and I like the Rodney Hudson trade. I mean, they gave up, he's a little bit older, but but he really fit a need. So, in terms of, the Ertz trade is going to be interesting. If they re-sign him for a decent deal, I don't mind it. If it was just a rental, I don't love it in retrospect, but hindsight's 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at who would you trade for, I think about what are positions that and I know a lot of people, even in the Discord, some folks have talked about trading for Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley is such a talented player. But with all respect to anyone who said that, personally, I'm not trading for a running back ever.
No.
Because Saquon Barkley's great running back. He would be a great addition. But he's the last year of his rookie deal. You'd have to extend him, spend a lot of money, and you can get good running backs in day 2, day 3 of the draft. You can get Pro Bowl running backs in round 2. In fact, a lot of them come from round 2. Mm-hmm. Dalvin Cook was a second rounder, right? Derrick Henry, second rounder.
I think Aaron Jones was a 4th or 5th rounder.
Right. So it depends on the position and how easy they are to replace. But if you can get an elite or player at a position that's hard to just pick up, through the draft or through free agency, then maybe I'm okay with that, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know. There's a lot of players out there that I would go for in that regard. Maybe offensive line. Mr. Romano saying maybe offensive line. I think Cooler prefers vets too. Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, there's free agents out there. So yeah, it's tough though. Cornerback's an interesting one, right? Bradbury, if you could get him, I don't know. Depends on what his deal looks like. I'd have to look at his contract, right? Mm-hmm. Xbox fan asking, should our first round pick be an O-line or D-line? My answer is yes. Whichever one the best one is there, value, right? Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandizer's kind of supporting that point. Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, all second rounders, right? So yeah. And then Mr. Brown saying D-line has more prospects in top 50. We could get Olo first, then D-line. I tell you, for me, I'm happy with those are the 2 positions I most strongly feel like we should go in the first round.
Yeah.
To me, it's one of those 2 positions or wide receiver, and only if it's a really good wide receiver that's there and it's the right type, right? What the right fit. So for me, it's offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver. And I know a lot of people say pass rusher, and there's so many good edge rushers. And I'm not going to say I'd hate edge rusher in the first round, but I think you can get a decent one in the second round with how deep it is. Mm-hmm. And as much as I think everyone thinks cornerback is one of our biggest needs, I don't want to go cornerback in the first round because that guy isn't going to contribute, I think, in the year 1. I think you go free agency with that, but I don't what are your thoughts on, I know I've just kind of spent taking up a lot of air with that, but what are your thoughts in terms of first round?
I 100% agree. O-line, D-line, whoever the best player available in those 2 positions. Mm-hmm. Because I don't really like CB in the first round either, because you can pay a free agent to come in. Wide receiver, I could see it. I could see it happening, maybe actually. Trying to do a little bit more even to placate Kyler Murray and give him what he wants. But positional need, O-line, D-line, either one. If I had to lean towards one, I would lean towards a first-round defensive lineman. I have 0 statistics to back this up, but I feel like first-round D-linemen tend to be more impact players on their teams immediately than first-round O-linemen.
Yeah. I don't have the numbers on that either, but it seems like not a ton of them. I think interior defensive linemen are taken. So if they are, they're usually really good.
Yeah.
I want to say hey to Beto real quick. Really good dude. Niner Sickness has his own kind of channel podcast. If you aren't following him, checking him out. Really good guy. I really appreciate him being here. Yeah, and I agree. I'm with free agency. I'm with Mark there. Corner, take care of that free agency. Yeah. Absolutely. And let's see. It's important to not devalue the running back position, but not be an utmost need that requires a first rounder. It has to be someone very special, and it's too high a gamble. Yeah. And then there's also, the shelf life for running backs, right? So I'm a huge fan of taking them between rounds 4 and 6.
Yeah.
We'll just get a couple more comments, and we actually crossed the hour mark. So we'll get a couple comments, and then we'll probably wrap it up. Let's get Travis Jones second round, like everyone drafted. Yeah, and that's a good chance for me to kind of plug Mock Draft Monday. If every Monday between now and the draft, I do a show with Corey Red Sea. We do Mock Draft Monday. We each do a mock draft. We profile some players. And if you want to get your mock draft in the show, when I post the link for it, I'll probably post it in the next couple of days, but there's instructions how to do that. Basically, you do a mock draft, you tweet it at me, and then we'll get it in the show, and we kind of go over them. And Travis Jones has been a very popular second round pick in all the mock drafts. And I love Travis Jones. He's an interior defensive lineman who I think would help fix that run defense. But I'll tell you something. They adjust those rankings in PFF's, at least PFF's mock drafts, the ones I use. And I'll tell you, a lot of my mock drafts, Travis Jones hasn't been available when the Cardinals pick in the second round anymore. I think he's moving up the rankings a little bit. He's been there a few times, but yeah, so I love him in the second round if he's there. But we need depth on the O-line for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, so we've kind of gone, we talked a little bit about the extensions, but then we've kind of gone all over the place with the chats, and you all have had some really great comments and questions. So we appreciate that. Do you have any final thoughts, Kyler, or let everyone know where to find you so that they can follow you on social media as well?
Yeah. You guys can find me on Twitter at @azcard_birdseye. I'm pretty active there. Tweet a lot about the Cardinals. Trying to get a little community going there so that we can all discuss it. I always enjoy these talks. Your guys' comments are always really good, and that's really what drives. 80% of the discussion are your comments. So thank you for those, and keep doing it. And Joseph's doing a great job on his channel. So support him every chance you get. Subscribe, like his videos. All of that helps.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that, Kyle. It's always great hanging out with you. Let me get a comment here. Another thing maybe for a future show are to mock some of the big media names who do mock drafts. I like that. Mock the mocks. Awesome. Thank you all for the kind comments. You guys are awesome. We appreciate that. Thank you for everyone who's here. If I didn't get your comments, I apologize. Kyler used to live in New Mexico, now he lives in Texas, where I spent 5 years in Texas. So yeah, thank you guys, and we appreciate you being here. Every Thursday night, TCR Live, our kind of general show, topical show, Mock Draft Monday. That's become a lot of fun. I think that's something I'm definitely enjoying, and folks who are there with us enjoy it. So, join us there, and then watch for my video that's going to come out. Depends on how long it takes me to finish it. Today or tomorrow, it'll be about Kyler's contract, and I think it'll be good. So thank you everyone for being here. Appreciate you all, and we will see you all next time. Peace.